Okay, guys, we are going to dive right in. I am with Taylor Stinson of Girl on Bloor. How are you, Taylor?
Hi, Jenny. I'm great. How are you?
Very good. I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. This is my first podcast.
See, and I am relatively new myself at this. I still oftentimes feel like I'm bumbling through exactly how to, put it all together, make it all work and flow. But I'm super excited to have you here. So Taylor is actually a student of mine from working with brands, and we have gotten close since then because she had done a consult with me in the beginning. And I've just gotten to know a lot about her and absolutely adore her. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit more. Tell us about what it is that you used to do, which is kind of makes me giggle a little bit because you're so young. But any previous experiences that you have and what has kind of led you to blogging and what you're doing now.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Honestly, I look up to you so much. So it's huge that you've kind of taken an interest in what I'm doing too. I'm so flattered.
You're so sweet.
Um, Well, I run the Girl on Bloor. It's a food blog primarily, and most recently, I've started up a photography business. I only have one client right now, but it's building, and I'm gaining experience with that. And I'm going to be putting together a portfolio very soon to kind of hopefully bring on more food clients and do a lot of different photography for their social media channels and kind of like web licensing for them to use in their digital media marketing efforts. So that's something that I'm currently working on building up. But before that, I was doing a master's in journalism at Ryerson University in downtown Toronto. And I was very interested in just kind of building a photography portfolio, like in the form of a blog to kind of showcase my work to future employers and, as well as my writing skills, because it's so hard to kind of get into the journalism industry. There's not a lot of jobs right now. And I thought I need to find a way to stand out. And I also need something to do in my spare time. Like a lot of my friends were kind of moving out of the city. It was getting too expensive to keep living there. And I wanted to find a different way to connect with people and just kind of fill my spare time. So it started initially as a hobby blog reviewing restaurants in downtown Toronto. And from there, I started getting a lot of invites to some PR firms, like their events and their brands and their clients. And that was a great way to network. And it just kind of evolved into itself over time. And then eventually I discovered that I really loved developing recipes, and I loved kind of showcasing what I was cooking as a student, and as a really busy person who also wanted to eat healthy food. So over time, it's just kind of evolved, and I've been working with different brands for I'd say about a year and a half now. But before I kind of took your course working with brands, I was mostly reaching out, or not reaching out, sorry, they were reaching out to me first. So I was kind of at the mercy of whatever they were offering me, and I kind of had to do all these campaigns on their terms. And some of them were great, and I made wonderful connections and contacts, but others I found didn't really allow me to hone in on my voice and bring my personality into it. It wasn't so much a partnership as it was someone just being tasked with finding influencers and putting together a program, and it wouldn't necessarily always be the best fit. So I saw your course pop up after I attended the Food Bloggers of Canada conference in October.
Okay,
And
yes.
that conference really inspired me to kind of go bigger with my business. And I saw your course. I thought about it, I think, not for very long, maybe 2 or 3 days between when I first learned about your course and when I bought. And I just thought, you know what, this is something that I really need to get into, and I'm confident that I can sit down and pitch people given my working relationship with a lot of other different brands in the past. And from there, you just kind of gave me the tools to work with what I already had and just work better, work smarter.
Right. No, absolutely. So now, how long have you had Girl on Bloor for?
Um, About 2 years, 3 years.
Okay. And another
Yeah.
one of the questions that comes to mind that I often seem to get asked about, as far as working in the US as far compared to Canada. Do you run into issues working with brands because you are in Canada compared to the US, or what were you working, who do you primarily work with?
I work with a mix, but primarily US. A lot of my readers are based in the US. I still have a significant Canadian readership, actually specific to Toronto, which
Okay.
attracts quite a few brands as well. But I find that sometimes I have to discount my rates when I'm working with Canadian brands because my audience just isn't as big. Whereas the US brands, I can kind of give them everything that they want, and it's not usually an issue. I mean, sometimes you don't get some of the same products here. Like, for instance, I've been working with Harvest Snaps recently. I have a long term partnership with them.
Yes.
And a lot of well, not a lot of the flavors are here, but some of the specialty ones, like the mango, chili, lime ones,
Okay.
aren't here yet. But I mean, it's also at an advantage to them because when they do launch here, then they also have me on the Canadian side to kind of help them out with that. So I don't know. I don't really see it as being an impairment. If anything, it sometimes works in my favor because if I get paid in USD, then it translates over to Canadian funds and I end up getting a little bit more money there. But at the same time, a lot of my business expenses are in US funds. Like I paid for your course in US funds, right? So
Right.
instead of whatever it was kind of time and a half.
Right. Compared to
So,
the currency rate. Okay, that makes
yeah.
sense. So yeah, I always seem to get a lot of questions from people when they're talking about what that they live in Canada and to work with a brand, and they seem to run into issues. But that's interesting. But I think what's important about what you said is that you know where your readership is, like you know where your audience is, and you can speak to that. And when you are a blogger or influencer, if you don't, you're not able to speak to those numbers when you're talking to a brand, of course they're not necessarily going to want to work with you if you're not in the US. So
Yeah.
that I love that you were able to, that is the reason that you gave as to why it's so easy for you to be able to do that. So, so
Yeah.
now, what do you find the toughest part about being an entrepreneur?
The most challenging?
Yeah. So, what is the toughest part? Sorry, what is the toughest part about being an entrepreneur? Would you say?
Okay, sorry about that.
No, you're
Uh,
fine.
no, managing your time, I think, is really, really difficult. Knowing where to kind of put, because your time is your greatest asset and your greatest resource when you're an entrepreneur. Um, there are only so many hours in the day that you can work before you burn out or before you have to dedicate time to your like, I've gone through days where you almost wonder like, do I even want to shower or do I even want to eat? Like I just don't feel like I have the time to do that today. And then you kind of have to step back and realize like what am I doing here? Like I need to prioritize self-care and social time and
Right.
all this personal stuff in between. So managing my time has been the greatest challenge so far, but I've tried to read some different productivity books. And in your course, you mention kind of blocking your time into your one thing.
Yes.
So I try and do that, work in blocks as well as kind of dedicate a couple of hours each day to the bigger picture stuff. But that's something that I'm running into, like I'm finding it to be quite a challenge lately because I have kind of all these bigger picture things on my mind now. I'm trying to kind of also launch my photography business. It'll be like in tandem with my blog, but it will also be kind of separate in that I'm pitching and selling things to different people. So maybe smaller brands in the beginning as I get started, smaller and local, and I'll be selling them different services. So it'll be like something extra that I have to do outside of the posts that I'm already doing for my blog. And then I'm also trying to learn more about that side of things. And a big part of retaining new clients and finding new clients will be through networking and my relationships. So I'm trying to focus on doing one thing each month, attending, whether it's a trade show. I have a produce trade show coming up in May that I'm really excited for that I'm attending.
Okay.
And then I'm also going to be doing a photography workshop with a local photographer who lives very close to me in April. So I'm trying to kind of do prioritize more events like that. And doing this podcast, you know, it's about building your
the network and
devoting time to your professional, like building your professional skills, right?
yes.
But I mean, it all takes time. It takes time away from kind of your ordinary schedule. It's very important. If anything, it's more important than your daily schedule. But it's just about kind of fitting those things in. So I think it's really tough being an entrepreneur because you have to know what to prioritize, how to manage your time, know that you have to be accountable to yourself, and then kind of also keep these goals, these future goals in mind. Like that is forever in mind. You are always developing new ways of growing your business and monetizing, and it has to kind of coincide with your own personal growth, right? And what is good for you at certain times in your life, because you're also going to go through different life stages, right? Like right now, I'm a new graduate and I'm in my mid-20s and I want to still have fun every now and then and make time for my friends and
right.
stuff like that. So I got to also keep that in mind, that I have personal relationships as well as professional relationships that I need to nurture and grow. And then as I go on, you know, I will get married hopefully one day and have kids. And that will be another challenge to deal with, that I will have to make sure that my business kind of runs alongside in a way that I can kind of do it all and do it all well.
Yes. No, it's definitely something that routinely comes up, is that whole idea of balance and then also productivity. Last episode that I spoke with Keita Roberts from Pasta Sushi, and she and I were talking about the whole idea of theming your days, which is something that I'm kind of trying to play with and figure out of how that would actually work for me. So like on Monday, I might just do my marketing, or on Tuesday, I'll just do my podcast interviews, whatever it might be, so that I'm not context switching so much from activity to activity. But it's the same idea, focusing still on knowing what the purpose is and knowing where you're trying to go with it all, and keep it all organized and prioritizing it for sure.
I like that idea of the theme days.
Yes. It's something that I'm taking Todd Herman's 90-day year course right now, and he talks about it a lot. And it took me quite some time to wrap my head around it and like how I could possibly make it work, but I'm trying to put it into play. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you set your mind to something and you can see how it will help you in the long run, it gets easy with time and practice to implement it.
Yes. Now, where does your entrepreneurial spirit come from, would you say?
I've always had creative projects my whole life.
Okay.
So ever since I was a little girl, I've worked on one thing or another. I became obsessed with the Titanic when I was 11 years old. You know, it was kind of right around the time, I think, when the movie came out, but yes. I was also learning about it in school. And I was convinced I wanted to write my own book about the Titanic, like a fiction story, and put it out. And I swear I worked on that for like 2 years, like on and off. I would come home from school and I would write up little chapters in this book. I mean, I don't know where it is now. It's on like some old Windows computer or a floppy disk or something. I don't know what happened to it, but I remember becoming obsessed and I would work on that for so long. And then I would also, I created like picture books for a little while when I was 9 and 10. That I would staple together, like I wanted to publish my own books. I would create like illustrations for my classmates. And then eventually, like I kind of stopped the whole project thing when I was in my teenage years and early 20s.
Yes.
But I got back into it when I was like 22, 23 with blogging, right? I thought I need that sort of stuff used to make me so happy, and I need to find another project. Something to keep me going every day, like something to be accountable for. So I started that. And meanwhile, all this time, I had been kind of hustling and working odd jobs. I worked as a cashier for many years at a hardware store. I worked as a lifeguard and a swim instructor for many years as well. I worked as a construction worker even. Like I flew out to the middle of nowhere, Manitoba, northern Manitoba, and worked for 4 months as a construction worker to save up enough money for grad school. And I kind of have and then I started to kind of freelance write as I started my blog and as I started grad school. I kind of fell into that. So it's one of those things where I've kind of always had something on the go, and all these kind of odd jobs made me realize that I hated working for somebody else. I just hated it. And not because they were boring, crappy jobs. I mean, the lifeguarding jobs could be fun, right? I worked at like an amusement park, or not an amusement park, a water park.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually quite a fun job. You were outside in the summer. It was great. You got a nice tan. You worked with a lot of other people your age. But I just hated being told what to do, and I hated not being in control. And then from there, I moved into an office job. So this was in between, I did 2 years of grad school. So during the summer, in between my first and second year, I ended up working for the Yellow Pages in an office. And that was a really great gig. It was a really good paying job for a student. And I loved the people that I worked with. And I was learning so many things like video editing, like things that were really directly related to my field. And it was fabulous. I couldn't believe how lucky I'd gotten. But I started to develop a problem with insomnia during that time. And I was wondering, I'd never had trouble sleeping before in my life. And I was wondering what was going on. And I began to realize more and more that I hated going into an office. I liked the job itself. It was a good opportunity. I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for my time there. But I began to kind of have this personal crisis because I was wondering, like I thought that this was kind of the best job I'd had yet. And I thought, what if this is what I end up doing my whole life? This is going to be my life. I wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and it's a rat race trying to get out there. I commute an hour there, and then I just spend my whole day sitting in this windowless office. I mean, it did have windows, but I wasn't sitting near one.
Right.
So it can be depressing. And it was the summer. It was beautiful weather outside. And then I would come home and I'd be too tired to do anything because I had just spent my whole day there and I didn't want to go outside or do anything. And I just had this personal crisis. Like, is this really what you want to do? And obviously your employment is like in the hands of someone else as well. At the end of the summer, like I was supposed to go back there in the fall potentially to work part-time. While I was in school. I mean, they never promised me anything. And I have, again, I'm so grateful for that experience. But they ended up telling me, mid-October that I couldn't come back. And that was very scary for me because I had kind of counted on coming back and having that little side income coming in. And then all of a sudden, I was left scrambling. They had run out of a budget, fair enough. But then I had to kind of figure out something else. And in the meantime, I thought, well, I'm just going to kind of work on my blog and just devote my time to that. And maybe I'll just live off of my student loan for a little while until I figure what else to do. Maybe I'll look for something new starting in January. And then from there, I started kind of getting these sponsored posts every now and then. And it gave me hope that I could do this on my own and that I could maybe not support myself right away, but at least I could develop the contacts and I could, my employment was in my own hands. And it was this wonderful, empowering feeling. And I've just kind of continued on with it, honestly. It's been great ever since then. I've been able to kind of build up the amount of work and the number of clients that I've had. And I learn new things all the time. And I think that that's part of being an entrepreneur is learning. You are excited to learn. You want to constantly find out what's next.
Right.
And everything is in your control. And that can be a scary feeling. But if you have confidence in yourself and you have faith in yourself that you can do what you need to do, then it's wonderful. So I wouldn't trade it for anything, being an entrepreneur.
Right. So now, one of the things that I have found about you over the past couple months is that you don't just pitch when you're working with a brand. You don't just pitch for the sponsor post. You're also thinking outside of it and thinking about your photography and how you can go about working with them in that way. What else do you stress with a brand that you think that kind of sets you apart from everyone else that's pitching them?
Being able to offer, like you said, like the photography, I think is my main thing. That is something that has been kind of my bread and butter with pitching. And that's something that the clients comment on right away when I pitch somebody. They go to my Instagram feed or they look at my blog and they say, your photos are beautiful. And I think that and a lot of people actually ask me if they can license my images. I don't let them necessarily because it would be too much of a jump in price from what I would charge for a sponsored post. But I do let them post to their social media and to their own websites, which is huge because, and this is like my other business I'm trying to build, right? I'm trying to kind of like sell brands on content for their social media because you constantly need content. And so if they can kind of get that and a sponsor post with me, I think that it's a good deal, and I think brands see the value in that. And I think a big part of it is educating someone. So I had a client come to me in December, and they wanted to inquire about the price of a sponsor post and recipe development. I wasn't sure how they traditionally worked with bloggers, or if they had other people just developing recipes for them, and that's it. And I've worked with other, companies and organizations, and I kind of know what the going rate is for recipe development alone, no photos. And that's in and around $250 here in Canada, at least kind of in this general area. But keep in mind, that's no photos. That's just going out and buying the ingredients and developing the recipes. And since I mentioned recipe development, I listed that price. And then I also listed my price for a sponsored post. And she asked me what the difference was between recipe development and the sponsored post. And from there, it was a good opportunity for me to kind of break down everything that they get with a sponsored post. So I explained, you don't get any photography, you don't get anything. You just get a recipe to put up on your website without a photo for $250. Whereas for $600, that is what I currently charge for a sponsored post, you can get the recipe development, you get 7 to 8 photos, you get all the social media marketing, you also get a readership base of 55 to 60,000 viewers every month. And then you also get the writing and the personality behind it and someone's personal endorsement. So you kind of get that whole package for just that one price. And it's cheaper than even if you had, like the recipe developed and the photo, because then you would still have to go out and do the marketing yourself. Whereas I'm also doing the marketing for you. You get access to my email newsletter. You get all the social media channels, and it's evergreen content. It lives forever on my site. It's not a magazine that you pick up and you look at the ad and you throw it away and you never see the magazine or the ad again. That ad will live forever on my site. And you never know when something will go viral either, because I submit it to food galleries. Sometimes things get picked up for features on BuzzFeed, MSN, Huffington Post. I explain that to them. You never know.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of, and I explain the traffic potential later is something could go viral on Pinterest a year from now or land the first page of Google. So for all of that, I mean, it may not happen, but at the same time, $500 or $600 is really nothing in the big scheme of advertising and marketing to spend, especially when you're getting professional photos on top of it. So.
No, and I love the way that you go through and you educated them, because I think oftentimes we just assume that every single brand understands the value that we bring to the table, and they don't quite understand yet. They don't understand the power that an influencer possibly can have down the road. Like you said, your example of Pinterest a year later is so true. So explaining that to them and showing them how that can work for them is just super, super smart. And I think that's one of the reasons that. Now, I have a question for you. This brand that you're specifically speaking of, did they come to you, or had you reached out to them that you had to then educate them about it?
They actually came to me first. I find less and less people are coming to me. I'm not sure if it's because I recently raised my prices. I raised them in October after the conference and your course.
Mm-hmm.
I was charging about, well, I mean, I'd always kind of raised them gradually. So at first I was kind of doing posts for $250, $300, about a year ago because I didn't really know any better. And then I raised my prices in the summer to $400 because I figured, well, $250 is pretty cheap. Like 400 still isn't that much. And then after, the conference and I hadn't had a substantial growth in traffic either. I just realized that I had to start charging more if I wanted to do less sponsored work, because I also don't want to look as though I'm just selling everything and anything. And like, I would need to do like 10 sponsored posts a month at a rate of $250. But sorry, anyways, that's kind of going a bit off topic from what you asked.
No, you're totally fine.
No, they did reach out to me, and they needed some education around it, but they were very open to listening. And then I think too, I was like, they were able to just see from the breakdown what kind of value they were getting. And I think that they have worked with recipe developers and photographers before, and they probably know the value of what like all of that is compared to, what they have to pay per photo or per recipe. But I do a lot of education when I reach out to different brands as well. I landed into a job another time because I know this sounds bad, but I kind of had a little bit of a fight with this brand on Instagram. They had reached out to me to inquire about sending product. And I kind of explained to them, like, if you're interested in working with me, like, I would love to have your email and I can send you over a media kit. But unfortunately, I don't do product reviews at this time, just because I get so many requests. Like, at this point, I just don't have the time to even do that anymore.
Right, of course.
So yeah, I just explained that to them. And they ended up saying, and I think they had maybe like 1,000 or 2,000 more followers than me on Instagram at the time. I think we're even now. We have the same number of followers now. And this happened in the fall. But anyways, they said, well, why would we pay you to do anything when you don't have as many followers as us? And I said, okay, you need to realize, though, that I have a website as well. I'm not just an Instagram account, and you get, several share. And I kind of went through my whole thing educating them. And in the end, they ended up feeling badly about the way that they had treated me. And they took a look at my site and my work, and we signed a deal over that. They because they saw the value in the end, right? And they thought, you know what, we've never worked with a blogger before, but we might as well, give this kind of a try and experiment and see. And I think that they were happy in the end, but at the same time, I'm not sure that they're going to continue working with bloggers. I'm not sure that they see the full value yet, but I think that it was worth it to get them at least thinking about it, because that's where the marketing industry is kind of going nowadays, right? Like, if you're not looking at maybe collaborating with influencers, you're a bit behind. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do a ton of collaborations each year, but even if you did something twice a year or quarterly or something, right, it still helps get the word out in a different way and generates a lot of buzz online in a world that is, in an online world that's hard to navigate. So yeah, it's very interesting, the interactions I've had. I mean, mostly they've been positive with different brands. They've been overwhelmingly positive, me reaching out. Either that or I just don't receive a response in return. But I mean, you can't please everyone, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you're taking it to the fact where you're educating them rather than just turning and making it an issue or, putting out nasty things on wherever it could possibly turn into a bad thing fast. But the way that you handle it is perfect, because it is. Other brands need to be educated. They don't quite understand yet what value we actually hold. So I love that you did that. And that's the way that you have actually seen, I would say, a substantial increase in your income. Right? For sure?
Yes. Yeah.
So now, let's talk a little bit about personal branding. How do you think more influencers should actually be leveraging this? Because I think you do an excellent job with that. You really know what your strength is, like your photography. And I don't think it's just like when I say photography, like I often just think of the pictures that are taken and come out of the camera. But for you, I also think it's the setup, like the style, everything that is there is also part of it. So okay, I'm just going to cut that. So I'm going to make a loud noise real fast so that I'll know where to cut it. Okay, so you have a lot of personal branding that you bring to the table. How do you think other influencers should be leveraging that?
I think you need to be honest with yourself about who you are. Um, you need to really look at the demographic that you would be attracting. So, like, for instance, I'm in my mid 20s. I'm a city girl. I'm a busy person. I like healthy, delicious food. I mean, I still kind of struggle with finding the right audience sometimes too. Like, I'm thinking about putting out like a reader survey soon to see if I can kind of narrow down my focus, the types of recipes I should be creating. I mean, I ultimately want to listen to the feedback that I'm getting, and I try to do that very regularly. But I think that I've kind of grown my blog into this brand that other brands want to work with, because I know who I am and I stay true to myself, and I'm not trying to be everything at once. When I first started out, I kind of wanted to do all these different kinds of food. I wanted to do a ton of desserts and, a bunch of cocktails and comfort food, but at the same time, I wanted to do, like explore a lot of like international cuisines. And like when I say that, I mean actually making the food authentically, like making, like going and researching what components of each dish kind of went into that recipe, right? And I'm describing a whole bunch of different niches right now. And you can't do that. Like, I know another food blog that I really quite like, Diversifor. He's, one of my good blogging friends, Sean. And he does a really fantastic job at kind of like I think he has like a chef's background. So he really dives into different parts of a dish and explains kind of the history, but also the specific techniques that go into creating it. And a lot of his food is like a work of art, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not me necessarily. I was trying to be that, but also put out comfort food, but then also kind of focus on the healthy, and I've since tried to kind of narrow in on, healthy, simple, delicious. That's kind of what I'm about right now, because that's what I eat in real life. I was realizing too that I was making a lot of things, like desserts, for instance. I was like making sorbet and like all this stuff that I didn't really care for in real life, but I just thought was kind of maybe trendy, or I'd seen a version of it in a magazine somewhere and really liked the styling. Mm-hmm. But then I wasn't eating the food, and I was kind of passing it off to friends and family, or like, and even sometimes throwing it out. And that sounds awful. I mean, this was 2 years ago, right? So it was a long time ago, but I've tried to really, every now and then, even last year when I was starting to get really serious about blogging, I was discovering that, I wasn't eating all of my food. I wasn't enjoying every single thing that I was making to the nines. And so now what I'm trying to focus on is, if I don't love it, it doesn't get put on the blog. I might shoot it. I've had to scrap at least 3 or 4 photo shoots in the past few months. And I hate doing that because I spend 4 or 5 hours doing a shoot. It's very time consuming. It's a whole half day. But you know what? If I don't love it, it means that someone else is not going to love it. And I think a big mistake that a lot of bloggers, like food bloggers in particular, run into is, well, even lifestyle bloggers, like if you're not passionate about something, whether it's a product or whether it's a recipe or an activity or a DIY or whatever you're doing, if you're not passionate and you're not going to use it in real life yourself, you probably shouldn't be putting it on your site. And I see a lot of recipes that kind of go up that, and it's not even about being poorly styled or poorly photographed. It's just, it wouldn't appeal to like a wide variety of people or even your niche. And I think that that's something that is very hard to get and understand. And a lot of people clearly, are not able to grow because of that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Like there are so many things that go into personal branding. Your site design as well. I think that it's been helpful that I chose my colors, the orange and pink, very early on because that also kind of sets me apart. But then my photography, I've tried to also develop a style. Like I love a lot of color. I love a lot of vegetables. So I try to really make my photos kind of pop and, I like that glow quality that you see, like the backlighting that a lot of other bloggers kind of, like Pinch of Yum has become so famous for. I love that, but I love the color aspect as well.
Right.
So
I think it's
developing style.
Yes. No, and that's the first thing that I think of when I think of your photos is color. Because it absolutely, like every single dish that you create always has like an array of color. I'm always like, how does she know what to put in there to make it look so pretty? I'm so jealous.
Thank you.
Yes, but so true. So now let's talk a little bit real quick. Projections. I always ask this question. Projections for 2017. Where do you see our industry going?
Oh my gosh, that's so tough. Because right now I am planning, to keep my career growing regardless of how the blogging industry does. So that's why I'm kind of aiming to launch this photography business as well. And then eventually I want to go the route that you've gone and kind of do the courses. So I have a master's degree. I can eventually pitch a university pitch because I know how to pitch now, thanks to you.
Very true.
I can pitch them a curriculum. But I can also do, online teachable courses or like an ebook or whatever, right? Come out with products. So I think that this year will be the year of the course, to be honest. You see, like I'm also taking Rachel Miller's Facebook growth course.
Mula Marketer, yes.
And I am learning so much. And I mean, between your course and her course, like I really feel like I'm going to develop a lot of like actionable advice to put towards growing what I've already kind of got. So I think that that's going to be the next biggest thing, whether or not you take a course or create a course. Courses are going to be huge. They're the new ebook, right? No one's buying ebooks anymore. And ebooks just can't give you the amount of information that a course can give you, right? Like, I mean, if you pay $30 for something versus 300, 400, 500, etc. for something, like you're obviously going to get a heck of a lot more out of the more expensive course. And it's actually going to give you stuff that you can really work on, right? But I mean, I also see a lot more brands working with bloggers too and paying bloggers a lot more because I think that we're all starting to demand more money for what we're doing. And when you think about it, it's not that much money. If I charge $600 for a blog post, some brands pay $2,000 or $3,000 for 2 or 3 images from like a big advertising agency.
Right.
So I think that, you're going to reach a smaller audience with me, but you're also paying per scale, like to scale. And I think too, we need to start earning a living wage. I think it's kind of like ridiculous that some of these networks, right? You sign up and you get paid $200 for a post and like you can't possibly feed a family on that or even feed yourself. And when you're self-employed, you have to pay a lot more money for things. You constantly have expenses. Like there's constantly things that you can be doing to improve, as well as, like you also you have to pay for your own retirement, your own health care, and you have to pay more tax. Like here we have to pay Canada pension plan on top of federal tax and all of that. So
Okay.
it's more money to run a business. So you need to be paid more. You need to be paid accordingly. So I think that we're going to start seeing that trend of people starting to get paid more of a living wage for this type of work as more and more brands get educated by people like you and me and all the other fantastic bloggers out there that are also working closely with brands and redeveloping the landscape. So I mean, I hope that blogging will stay around. I hope that my blog is something like a property that I've built that I can continue to keep using as an income source for years. But I think sometimes you just don't know how long something's going to stay around either. So it's also a great time to like leverage the skills that you're building through your blog and put it towards something else, whether it's coaching, whether it's photography or food styling or what have you. So either way, I think that there's going to be continue to be a really bright future for bloggers going forward, and that will continue this year and just get bigger and better.
Yes. No, I love that. And I love the fact that you're talking about diversifying, but you're also talking about diversifying by like locally, which is something I think we often overlook. Like we forget
Yeah.
about that you can look right in your neighborhood, right in your town as far as using the skills that we have gained because they are very, I mean, I get honestly job offers for social media managers in local places, businesses, and I'm just kind of like, I'm good with doing everything out of my own home.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So, Taylor, tell everybody where's the best places to find you out on social media. Give them their site, give all the information where they can find you.
Well, you can find me online, first of all, or on my site, first of all, at thegirlonblore.com. But otherwise, you can find me on my Facebook page, The Girl on Blore. You can find me on Twitter. That's the same handle. I think I'm pretty much The Girl on Blore across all social media.
You were
Yeah.
smart. You branded it and you made it so that it was easy to find you across social media. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I appreciate it beyond belief.
I am so grateful you had me. This is so much fun.
Excellent. All right.
Talk